Okay, we're good? Okay, well thank you all for joining us today. Thank you to Vicki's friends and family that are here with us in the audience. And then also thank you to all of you who are watching virtually. We really appreciate your support and for you joining us. Some of you may have come to our opening reception last night and we had a great time and it was really good to feel people in the space and experiencing Vicki's work. I would encourage everyone, if you were not able to come to the opening, please go to our website. You can make an appointment. You do have to make an appointment, and you can sign up for a time slot. We're following as much safety protocols as we can. Masks are required. We just have ours off for the talk today. So please make an appointment to come check out the show. It will be up through February 5th. So there's plenty of time to come experience the work and see what Vicki has made for us here. So a little bit before I turn things over to Vicki, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Sarah Beth Wilson, Director of Exhibitions and Curatorial Projects here at Art Week Houston. And Vicki is our 2021 Texas Artist of the Year. And a little of history for those of you that do not know the backstory behind the Texas Artist of the Year. It was established in 1983 as a dynamic project documenting contemporary Texas art history. The award recognizes artists who have demonstrated exceptional creativity and outstanding achievement, and whose work has been a significant and positive impact on contemporary visual art in Texas. To date, we have honored 36. Vicki is our 37th honoree, so it's a pleasure to have her here today with us. Also really interesting with Vicki's exhibition this year, she has taken all three of our gallery spaces and created site-specific installations. That's all I'm going to say about it because I want Vicki to be able to talk about that. But please do, when you make your appointment, plan to come in and start here in the main gallery and make your way towards the front gallery so you experience everything in the way she intended. And a little bit about Vicki, very quickly. Born and raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Vicki Meek is a nationally recognized artist who has exhibited widely throughout her career. She's currently represented by Tally Dunn Gallery in Dallas, and her works can be found in the permanent collections of the African American Museum of Dallas, the Museum of Fine Arts here in Houston, among many others. Most recently, before her exhibition with us, she had an installation with the Nasher Sculpture Center, part of their Nasher Public, featuring Stony, the road we trod. So that was also a site-specific installation. And with this exhibition, one of the really cool things is that we publish a catalog on the artists. And Vicki's, I don't have one here with me, but we do have them for sale. You can buy them on the website and they can ship to you, or you can come pick up if you're local, so please check that out. It is designed by Lindsay Starr Design. I want to give a special shout out to Ellie, Vicki's sister, who helped with editing so much, so thank you, Ellie. And then also Dr. Lauren Cross, who was our writer for the catalog. So it's an amazing piece of work itself, celebrating Vicki's history as an installation artist. So please be sure to pick up one of those. And last but not least, I want to thank our underwriters who made all of this possible. The John P. McGovern Foundation in the name of Catherine G. McGovern, the Jacques-Louis Vidal Charitable Fund, Sheila Heimbinder, Rick Lowe's Studio, Melanie Lawson and John Guest Jr., Tally Dunn Gallery in Dallas, in memoriam to Betty Hayes, Ellie Meek and David Tweedy, and Jackie Jackson. Thank you all so much for your support. It means the world to us and makes everything that we do here possible. And a very special shout out to the Art League staff that helped get all this together. Erin Carty, who our virtual people will not see, but she's filming here, was instrumental in getting the exhibitions up, as well as Nicole Lemaire and Locke Wynn, who came in as install assistants, and the whole team here really helped knock everything out. And Vicki. Vicki was in here with us, so guiding us in the
They were going to work.
So I'm done. I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you so much, Vicki. And yeah.
Well, thank you all. We got a short amount of time. So thank you all for coming. I want to do a big shout out to Sarah Beth Wilson, who's been a delight to work with. And you know, when you're an artist who is working with a space, that's so critical because she not only looked out for my work, she looked out for me. So thank you so much, Sarah Beth. And then the staff here also, I would like to thank, because they were incredible. The installers, they did everything expertly, and you will see as we walk through. It's not that the show was so complicated, but there are certain things that were very specific that they got absolutely spot on. So thank you, staff of ALH. So let's start with talking about the show. I want to talk about what motivated the show first. When I was asked, first of all, when I was told that I was Texas Artist of the Year for 2021, I was excited. But then I was told that I had 3 galleries that I was going to have at my disposal. So, you know, some artists would go, oh, no, that is too much. But for me, what it did is it triggered a possibility for me to do something that would be a narrative that would have a way of traveling through the building and allow a person to see some things about me and make their way back to a gallery that would really give them some context for what they saw. So I started thinking about, you know, well, how do I want to do this? And I decided that I really wanted to talk about the way in which my work progressed over time. And so hence the title, The Journey to Me. And there's no way that I can talk about myself as an artist without talking about who the major influence was on my life as an artist. And that started literally when I was 8 years old and I announced to my parents that I was going to be a sculptor. And they, because they were always about affirming their children and whatever their children wanted to do, they put Elizabeth Catlett's work in front of me and said, you can do it, because look, here's a black woman that's doing it. And so from the time I was 8 years old, Elizabeth Catlett has been a part of my life as far as what I wanted to do. I became a sculptor, and she also was a printmaker, so when I did go to college in art, I majored in sculpture, but I minored in printmaking. Now mind you, I don't think I ever did any prints on paper, but you know, I was a printmaker. I printed on plastic and vacuum formed them for my sculptures and did all kinds of stuff like that. But the printmaking part came because of her. The other part of it was my parents put her in front of me very specifically because, like them, her politics were what they could agree on. And that was, they were all in the Progressive Party, which at that time, you know, a lot of people were calling communists, but they were not. They were simply for equal rights. They were for united health care for everybody we're talking like back in the 40s, in the 50s. And for black and brown and all people of color to have dignity in this country. So they were fighting for the ability to be full Americans, essentially, and for full Americans to have certain rights. So that earned them being on my dad called it the white list, because they, you know, it's called the black list, but he called it the white list, that McCarthy started, that had them marginalized from the standpoint of their work. So I grew up as a child knowing every single famous person who was what they called a rat. And rats were people who really told the House of Un-American Activities Committee that their neighbors they suspected were communists. And it was a horrible time, much like we've experienced these last 4 years before now. The same kind of thing going on with people, you know, ratting out their neighbors for all kinds of things. And what's going to happen if we, you know, have this new law about abortion, that's going to happen with our women, you know. So that was what was happening, and that was what I was told to look for in a political artist. What are their politics saying? Elizabeth Catlett was an artist who my parents could co-sign on her message. And from the time that she started doing work, she started doing political work that she said would uplift our people. So my work also started that way, very overtly political. When I came out of graduate school, in fact, the work that I did for my MFA exhibition was a work that examined police brutality and against black people and various and sundry ways in which we had been annihilated. Fun topic, right? But anyway, that's what I did for my senior show, for my MFA show. So then the work went, you know, that direction. And so when I started thinking about the show, I said, well, what I'd like to do is I'd like to look at 20 of Elizabeth's iconic political pieces and reimagine them with work from me. And so the titles that you see in the pieces that this is a list that's that's what I did. I went through and just the titles, I looked at the titles and saw this piece here. This was her Torture of Women. Hers had a black young man on the ground bleeding with the mother weeping over him. But I decided for me, it's all of the names of all the black people who were murdered by police in the 21st century, up until the point that I started doing the show. And that's all of the names. And then on each side, say their names, it's just sort of working its way down because, you know, I'm calling their names into the space. So that's my interpretation of her torture of mothers, because that's the torture of mothers today. Obviously, the flag as a way of identifying this as a uniquely American conversation. And then the Akuba dolls, which are from Ghana. Akuba dolls are iconic dolls from Ghana. The biggest head is to represent Elizabeth, and then the smaller head is me. So this is sort of the Akubas. If you know the history of the Akuba dolls, they are a symbol now of creativity and fertility. So I'm using this to talk about my relationship to her. I should mention that when I was in graduate school, that's when I had the pleasure of finally meeting her in person, because she was banned from coming in the States in the 50s and was not allowed to come in for the longest. And then she would have times when she would, now that she's dead, I can say that she used to tell me, don't ever tell me this. She used to sneak in under a fake passport at times. And it was interesting because it was a Jewish name that she used. That if you've seen Elizabeth, you know she could be sort of, you're not sure what she is, but she would come back and forth that way. This particular time, she had come into the States for a National Conference of Artists award that they were giving her, and it was at Howard University. And I had gone up with my professor, Frida Hine, who was really big on making sure that students not only got out to see art, but got to things like these professional conferences. And we artists were all broke, so we couldn't go to the banquet, which was, I don't know, it was probably $35, and that was when we had. So we were sitting on the steps of the quad, and Elizabeth came out and sat with us. And, so we were like, wow, are you going? She said, whatever. I might get back in there, but I might not. She said, but, I'm out here, I want to see what's going on. And so this was my idol. So I was just like, hyperventilating, and like, this is Kevin. So I said, well, can you tell us about your work? And she said, forget my work. Let me talk about your work. What are you doing? And that was my introduction to this amazing woman who the rest of my time with her was always so giving. I'm starting to get emotional. I'm going to try to stop the part. Always very giving, very much about nurturing us. And she was not unlike many of the others. Romy was like that. I mean, all the artists that I had the pleasure of, as a young artist, meeting who I idolized, they were all like that. So that's what this was about, an homage to her. Now, she did an iconic piece called Target, and that's my Target print of takeoff from her. But I decided that her Target, which had a black man's head and a target in front of it, today, the target is blackness. It's not just black men, it's blackness. And so that's what this piece over here is about. It's about really understanding this notion of blackness being the target of derision, the target of death, the target of all kinds of things to obliterate. These red dots that are the target dots represent the European countries that enslaved Africans, and then the two European countries that after official enslavement was over colonized. So all of those became colonizers and then added two more to it after slavery was abolished. And then these various quotes that I pulled were specifically about the fact that essentially black people were never supposed to be in this country protected. So, when you see Franz Fanon say, when we revolt, it's not for a particular culture. We revolt simply because for many reasons we can no longer breathe. That, to me, says it all. And I'm anchoring each side of Ida Newell's, those who commit the murders write the reports, and Elevator, we who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Those two anchor these discussions, because that's really the crux of it. So I want to move back to this wall here, and then we'll move out of this gallery into the hallway gallery. These are quotes from Elizabeth Catlett, with me putting my little 2 cents in about what I think about the quote. But this one here, I'm going to tell you a funny story about this one, because this one here, it resonated so much with me when I saw it, because she said this to me on any number of times. There was a time when I first moved to Dallas in 1980, and I was doing my art, and I didn't have any children, and I was thinking to myself, man, you know, women artists I need a wife, because, you know, men artists get to do what they do because they've got a wife at home to take care of them. So maybe I'm just never going to have any children, because that just seems like the death knell once you do that. And so I was sitting with Elizabeth talking about that, and I said, I just don't see how I could do this thing with children. And she said, she cussed a lot, but I won't cuss tonight because we're doing it. She said, are you crazy? Of course you can have children. You just figure it out. You know, and at some point they figure out mom's an artist, and you know, you figure out how to make this work. You don't decide not to have children because you're an artist. So this piece here, you can be black, a woman, a sculptor, a printmaker, a teacher, a mother, a grandmother, and keep a house. It takes a lot of doing, but you can do it. Now she also used to always add it helps if you marry a feminist. But you know, and she had one because Papa was amazing. But anyway, so these quotes are all quotes that I felt absolutely capsulized who she was and why my parents wanted me to have her as the person that I looked up to. And then over it, you know, as I said, I'm just making comments, ashe, ashe, ashe. On this one, yes indeed, period, end of story. This says it all. Yes ma'am, for real, for show, and this right here. It's amazing, you know. So, should I ask questions in each room, or should I do it at the end?
Maybe in each room. So, you know.
All right, so if there are questions in this room, let's ask them now, and then we'll move into the hallway gallery. Or you'll stand at the end of the hallway gallery, and I'll move through. No, it's okay, y'all. I already know y'all. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk a little bit about the media?
Oh, yeah. So these prints are actually vinyl on organza fabric. And the reason I was attracted to it is because the fabric shines. And it's like these were like little jewels for me. The technique is not anything major. I mean, it's what they do for t-shirts. And I have a friend that's a printmaker who has this machine, and I did the drawings, and then he, you know, scanned them into this machine and cut the vinyl, and then pressed them onto the organza, and then I cut them out and put them. But that's what this is. Like I said, I never really printed on paper. That would be a new thing for me. But I like the way they became like something other than just a print.
Question. The title, Journey to Me. How did you agree on that title with yourself? And what is it that you want us to get from the title?
Well, I came to that title because I really did want to explore my artistic and aesthetic development. And it's about that. It's always a journey with an artist. I mean, you know, you start in one place, but you hopefully don't stay in that place. Hopefully you keep developing and grow. And so it's a journey. And so this exhibition, these 3 galleries are the journey to who I am. And I want people to be able to understand that the journey does not ever, if it does, you're in trouble. The journey should not stay in one place. A journey is about travel. And this is a traveling through my artistic development. And you know, who knows what it'll be 10 years from now. Anybody else? All right, let's move to the middle gallery. That's what I thought. That's what I said. Yeah. I'm going to talk here, and you know. Anyway, all right. So this gallery, you can move a little closer so you can do right. But this gallery is where I begin to. Can everybody get in this way? Can you hear me?
No.
All right. All right. Can everybody hear me that's in the hallway? Okay, good. If Gail can hear me in the back, then you can hear me. So this gallery is actually where I begin to explore the transition from that overtly political work that I talked about to what I call now a kind of spiritual interpretation of the political conversations that I'm going to have. And this happened, and it's going to sound corny, but it's not. It's the truth. This happened after the death of my mother and the birth of my children, because my mother was killed when I was pregnant with my first child. And it just flipped everything in my head in terms of what it was that I wanted to concentrate on. And I began to really, I say that what happened is all of that really sort of humanized my discussion, and it was no longer a way to deal with this political conversation abstractly. I began to deal with it in a very real way, with the kind of spiritual, how do these things affect us as Black people from a spiritual standpoint? And the spirituality that I'm talking about had to do with my, I had always embraced Ifa, the Yoruba religion, Ifa, but now I was really kind of looking at how can I weave all of that into this work. And so in the late 80s is when you begin to see the appearance of these various and sundry Yoruba-based iconographies that I begin to use. So these first two pieces are my children's actual birth announcements, and they're on a field of blue. Blue is a protection color, and blue and red are protection colors in traditional African art. So they're on a field of blue. And then we make our way down here with these little paintings, and these are all of the symbols that begin to show up in the work. The cowrie shell, the Adinkra symbol, the Mende head. The Mende head because the Mende are a society in Sierra Leone where it's matrilineal, and the word woman is synonymous with beautiful. So there is none of this gradation of you're thin, you're beautiful, you got this kind of hair. Woman, beautiful. So I often use it as a way of talking about feminine strength. So that's what you'll see here. Then the Sankofa bird, that shell, the shell you'll see in the back room, it's the shell my grandmother brought me back from Ghana when she made her first trip in 1974, I believe, or 75. And then the white rooster, symbol of the ancestors, and the turtle, the symbol of continuity, longevity, and direction and wisdom. And then on the end of this wall are my ghost image of my parents, enshrouded in ladybugs, because ladybugs, are a symbol of love and family and unity and all of that. So that's why they're covered in ladybugs. And then on this wall is my Oshun wall, because I always pay homage to my own head, which is Oshun. And she is, standing on a shelf with the two images that come from the myth of how Oshun saved the earth. She supposedly was beautiful as a peacock, and then she was trying to save the earth from a drought because the other Orishas had been stupid and acted like they were better than God, and God said, to punish you, I'm going to put a drought down there. She flies up to beg God to bring water to earth as a peacock, but she has to go through the sun, so all of her beautiful feathers are burnt off, and that's how the vulture painted it. So that's what those two images relate to. And now we will, anybody have any questions in this gallery? Come, you come through.
Vicki, can you talk about the circle and the fabric and where the fabric comes from?
Well, it's not going to be as exciting as it sounds, because I am the queen of ready-mades. So, somebody said, did you do that, Boutique? I said, I don't think so. What I do is I find things that fit what I want to have happen visually. I found this particular, it's a tablecloth. That's what this is. But it fit exactly what I wanted it to be. I wanted it to look like an African batik. It had to be the blue indigo, because I'm relating this to this color blue. You've seen other color blues in my installation. This color blue in particular is indigo blue. And of course, indigo was a material that we were enslaved for in many places. It was very valuable. Europe was using it a lot in terms of their fabric, and so they were making Africans make this indigo, and it killed them in many instances because it was poisoning them. So I'm using this color as both a protection color, but now I'm having a conversation also about what one had to do to get to be protected. So that's what this is. The gold, of course, is encircling this, because the circle of obviously continuity of the circle, and then the gold because she is gold. That's one of her colors. Gold, yellow, and white are Oshun's colors. And then I use gold also as just a symbol of value. Obviously, if I'm enshrouding this in value, in gold, I'm valuing this whole conversation. Gold frames around Elizabeth's words. Gold words over Elizabeth's words. That's so. Whenever you see the gold, assume that I am talking about this is a very valuable conversation being had. Yeah.
I know you're intentional. Can you talk about your decision to have these two bookend pieces be flush against the birth announcement and the parents?
Yes, I will.
Can you repeat the question so we can know?
Yes, I will. So the question was, would I please talk about my intentionality in having the two paintings that flank these the birth announcements and my parents, because Q knows that I'm very intentional about what I do. So yes, the cowrie shell is the symbol of good luck, good fortune, and all of those things related to that. And as far as I'm concerned, that's what those babies did for me. I could never have imagined what having children, in fact, I really surprised myself at what I became as a mother because, I used to, my girlfriend Frida Hyde, the professor I told you about in Wisconsin, she was the first one in our group to have babies. And she had her son, and the next thing I know, she wasn't making any art or anything, and I was just like, Frida, are you going to get back to work? And she was like, I produced the best art I could ever, and I was like, bullshit, no, that's just about you need to get to work, girl. I've been going through all this. And then I had Patrick. And I literally would spend hours just looking at him. That's what happens. Anybody that's a parent knows that's what happens. And I think for artists it's even amplified because you really are amazed by this thing you produced. And it really is the best art you'll ever make. So that's why that one starts that one. And the one at this end, of course, is the turtle, which has to do with longevity and continuity and wisdom, and that's my parents. I'm continuing their legacy. So that's why this one is there. And then the blue streaks on each one of those, related to that. So thank you for that question, too. And then you can see they have all their ladybugs. They got all their ladybugs. And they're in a field of blue, obviously. Okay. I'm going to come over here so that people can come all the way over there.
Vicki, I missed what the turtle meant.
The turtle is a symbol of continuity, longevity, and wisdom.
And then what does the bird mean?
The Sankofa bird? Okay.
Yeah, he was in the hallway.
That's a Sankofa bird.
Yeah.
That's this.
Yeah, actually.
Sankofa is a concept, actually. But the concept is that you have to look back to your past in order to understand both your present and where you're going in the future. The idea for it has become, in terms of Afrocentricity, is there's no way you cannot know your history from Africa as a black person anywhere in the diaspora and understand where you need to be going. So for me, it's all about the reason why I do the work I do. It's very research-based. It's very about who we are as black people. It's about celebrating various aspects of that. That's why, for me, Sankofa is a concept that I utilize always in my work. So let's not start with the yard, let's start with this. This tapestry, they paved the way because they did. This is my great-great-grandmother, my great-grandmother, my grandmother, my grandfather, and my parents. And then, there's that Sankofa bird enshrouded in there. So, these are my ancestors. Now, you're not hearing it, but there's a soundtrack that you will hear when you come to the gallery. You all were at the opening, so you heard it. So that soundtrack is me doing a Yoruba chant that says, essentially, life is the marketplace we visit, the afterworld is home. Farewell, farewell. And then I call out the 26 names of my ancestors that are on our family tree. And then there's 26 shells to represent them coming out of the shell that my grandmother brought me from Ghana. And then 16 calories from 16 calorie divination is wrapped around this particular rooster. And then the turtles, and then the aloe plants, because they're healing plants. These people are who heal me. My ancestors are who I stay healed from. And all on a gold runner with the red pattern underneath this headrest. Because you always got to have a little bit of a altar to your ancestors. I keep one in various places in the house. But that's what this altar is about, honoring these ancestors. And then in this yard, which is a peat moss yard, peat moss, for those of you who are herbalists and what have you, peat moss was at one time used for healing. They would make paste and all kinds of things with it. Many cultures, but African cultures in particular. And then these white roosters, one for each one of my ancestors in this tapestry, are in the yard. The Sankofa bird has Adinkwa symbols, all of which have to do with the idea of resilience, unity, love, and those are the ones that I picked for that bird. The bamboo basket thing that it's sitting on, you always hear bamboo, you can't kill it. No matter what you do, it's going to grow back. So I use bamboo as synonymous with the notion of black folks. You can't kill us. You can try, but we're going to rise again. So that's what that bamboo. For those of you who saw the Nasher piece, you know that was in that one as well. And then it's rimmed in blue. And then for the Sankofa bird, his feet are painted blue and gold and blue on the feathers and a blue beak, because for me that's about protecting the egg, which is the knowledge from back when you go back, you have that fertility. So that's what all of that is. And then a funny thing happened with this exhibition. There were so many things that I felt like the ancestors were literally steering all of this, because when I did the Nasher piece in this base, I had a sort of a ziggurat base thing like this as well. The base was gold. That conversation was about generic ancestors. It wasn't about mine specifically. It was just about sort of generic African ancestors, because I had 12 birds, all of which were labeled with the various tribes that were enslaved in this world. I had told Sarah, I sent Sarah Beth the information about the gold paint, what I wanted, exactly colored, We could not find that paint anywhere. I mean, nowhere, including the manufacturer who has a store in Dallas. They said, oh, it's going to be maybe 8 to, 10, I don't know. So I was just like, okay, so what am I supposed to do with that? And then I realized they're not supposed to be gold. They're supposed to be red, the protection of this column here, to match the red Adinkwa symbols. And so I sent her the red, and of course that was readily available. The same thing happened with these cowrie shells. I'm thinking I'm going to cut a few corners, I'm going to order them on Amazon, and I'm going to get these cowrie shells from there. So I ordered them on Amazon, and they're coming from Indonesia. So they don't come. And finally, I get a note that says, we just don't have these, I don't know that. So I take my little happy ass on that. I'm sorry, people on streaming. On down to Pan-African, where I should have been in the first place. And I said, Ekwete, where do your cowrie shells come from? She said, Ghana.
Yep.
I said, okay, I get that. Okay, all right, I got it, ancestors. Ghana. Everything in here is from Ghana. That's where my grandmother said our roots are from when she did her genealogy and made her first trip to Africa. She said she's convinced she found her people. And she probably did, because my grandmother had a name, and it turns out it was an African name, because she didn't know what it was growing up, so she was embarrassed by it. No other people in her community had that name. So she used her American name, Josephine, but she always had that name. So she had something to work with when she started doing the research, as well as other stories that she had heard handed down. My grandmother lived to be almost 90 before she died, and she died in 79. So, we're talking about, she was born in the 1800s and made her way up. So she probably knew some stuff. So what I found was that I wanted everything that I had that was from Africa to be from Ghana. So that's what is in this exhibition there. Nothing that is the headrest is from Ghana, the Sankofa bird is from Ghana, the Akua Badals are from Ghana, all of the shells are all from Ghana. All of those things I feel like represent who I am. And as I said, when you hear the soundtrack, then you really hear me calling their names in and the chant and all. It's very much about spiritually getting back in touch with those ancestors. So, questions? Yes, ma'am.
Why are they represented in a negative format?
I see them as ghost images, as spiritual images, as opposed to if I'd shown them in their positive, it would be like they were still here, and they are not. And so I need to talk about the fact that they're not in that way here, but they are here always in a spiritual way. So that's why I did them in the reverse. Because it looks cool. Gail?
Hey, tell me again the symbolism of the chickens and the turtle.
Okay, now first of all, I'm going to correct you and tell you they're roosters.
The roosters. Thank you very much.
But the roosters are, the white rooster is a symbol of the ancestors. Now I have painted these particular roosters with blue feet and gold bases. For, remember what I told you about the blue and the gold. And then the red crown, and then the beaks are gold. But that's, each one of these represents one of them, because it's 6 of them and 6 of these. The turtles, once again, are about continuity, longevity, wisdom, all of that. That's what the turtles are. So the turtles are serving as sentries for this altar. Mm-hmm. And they're on, blue plates, rimmed in gold. So. Blue plate special.
What was your grandmother's name that you didn't say? The name that she had that she didn't
Binta.
know?
Binta.
Bita.
Binta.
Binta.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And she never heard of any other Bintas. So she was like, I don't know what that is. I'm gonna go with Josephine.
Talk about the spiritual connection that you have with your ancestors, including your great grandmother.
Yeah, her daughter is who I am named for.
Oh, beautiful.
Uh-huh.
So, do you know? I don't know if you knew your great grandparents. Okay, you didn't know your great grandparents.
I didn't even. In fact, my cousin who was here yesterday, my cousin supplied these photos. I never saw a photograph of her.
Oh wow.
And so when my cousin said, well, I actually have a photograph of our great-great-grandmother. I said, really? So she said, yeah, I just got that. So she sent me that picture, which I had never seen before. I had seen the picture of my great-grandmother, because that we had in the collection. Of course, my grandma and my grandfather, yes. But no, the great-great, I had never even seen a picture of her until this installation.
Wow. So do you know if they gave to you any creative?
I just know Winnie Ross was a farmer, so I don't know. Who knows? People didn't even call themselves that, so you don't know. I do know that my grandfather was very creative, and I know that my grandmother may not have called herself an artist, but what I say is, how the old black women with their houses, you just looked at their houses and you could see by the way that they arranged things and what have you, that they were very creative. That was my grandmother. Her house was beautiful. Neither one of my parents were artists. They produced 5 artists. I don't know. I later found out, though, that there were people in the family who, once again, they didn't feel like they could pursue art, but they were very creative. So, it's hard for us to know exactly where all this comes from when you don't have people who identify themselves as such. We did have an uncle who identified himself as a jazz musician, even though the family had disowned him because he was. But, we figure was one of the people who made for why we have 5 jazz musicians in the family. So all of these things, I'm sure if I did some serious research. I'm not the person who does the genealogy in the family. That is actually my cousin who was here last night. At first my grandmother, and then my cousin got all of her material. I just reap the benefits by minding her mind about, who do I need to be looking at next?
Vicki, I don't want to trivialize the conversation, but you look at that image and the attention to design and detail, the pattern in your grandmother's dress, your great grandmother's pattern in here. We've been doing high fashion forever. You know, look at your grandfather.
And my grandfather was the bomb.
I mean,
No, grandpa was all about dapper.
You know, the polling here, I don't know what they call it in France, but you know what I'm saying.
The cravats.
That word.
The cravats.
So, how in your past work and in work that you've done over the years, has design ever played in your head with the work?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean always. I mean I made this collage. You know, this didn't come this way. I had to find the pictures and then create the collage, and then I photographed it and then changed it to the negative one. But no, design is always all of this. I mean, you can see. I mean, it's always in my head how things get designed because it's how things get read visually. So I can't not be concerned about design if I'm trying to make an impact.
I wanted you to say because
I know.
a lot of times what happens is we think that
Everybody
the
knows.
artist just wakes up and says, I want to do a circle and I want to add this and I want to add that. But the design element is really why we revere their ideas. You know, you breathe life into material. So
No, absolutely, absolutely. You know, John.
I didn't know anything about what the roosters were supposed to symbolize, but my first thought seeing all those roosters was wake up.
See, now there's another layer.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start using that. Randy. Oh, I'm sorry.
Vicki, in contrast to your exhibit at the Nasher, which was a universal Black experience into this personal one, I just find it fascinating how the universal was square and your personal is encompassing.
That's right. Randy could say that because he put the yard in. he and my son-in-law put the Nasher yard in. But no, yes, and that's a good observation because for me, that conversation was about basically a four-sided conversation about America. This conversation is about the continuity of my family. So a circle is absolutely essential in this. And the square inside here, that's a different story. That's the sort of pedestal to this conversation about October. But the yard is about
That's the anchor of
right.
both
The
of
anchor
those.
is this circle. Yeah. Yes. These represent your ancestors. Can you tell us why they're all facing different directions? Because my ancestors they were all in different directions. I mean, they were all doing different things. They were not all going in the same, they all had the same political ideas, but they did not have the same life. They all went in different directions. My parents, my mom was a lawyer. My father was a social worker / professor. My grandmother was not allowed to practice because back in the day, she couldn't even get a job, even though she had a college education. She couldn't get a job in her field, so she worked for the government in Springfield, Illinois. But she and my grandfather were contemporaries of W.B. Du Bois, and they worked together to form the NAACP because they're from Springfield, Illinois. Anybody knows the history of Springfield, Illinois, that's where that first major massacre of the Black community riot happened that made it that the NAACP came to be. So that history, and the interesting thing is my grandmother never talked about that to us. Now I knew that she, didn't care for white people, but I didn't know the history behind it. And so all of that was why we grew up, understanding that you must be responsible to your community and that you must be politically engaged at all times. So all of that came from these two people. This woman, I didn't know any of my great or great grands. I didn't know them personally, so I can't tell you what. But I do know that it's hard to produce a person that has that kind of sensibility unless the parent has it. So I have to assume that these folks were also talking about those issues to their children, so that they would then carry it on.
You kind of answered my question. It was from a U.S. Geographically, where are they from?
Great Illinois. The great on my grandmother's side were free people. Now, at some point, I'm sure somebody was enslaved, but they were free people. This woman was a free woman. She and her husband had a farm in Illinois, and they were free people. Ellen Morse, my great grandmother, was enslaved. She was a slave until she was 5.
Where?
In Kentucky. So my grandfather was raised in Princeton, Kentucky, and somehow I don't even know the whole story of how he met my grandmother, except she was teaching, and I think that she was assigned to a school there, and that's how they were together. But then they all moved to, these three all moved to Illinois. So my father was born in Illinois. My mother's in Philadelphia.
Whenever you hear the chants when you walk in here, it like, at least yesterday, it like immediately took me to a spiritual place, even before I really expected everything. So I'm wondering what the emotional process, I guess, was for you with everything. Well, I guess specifically this room more so.
Yeah, well, this room obviously was very, very personal. I mean, all of it is, but this room was like, this had to be right. And the chant that you hear is actually my voice,
Right.
but it's been manipulated by Christian Vasquez to sound like it's coming from multiple people, and you're not sure if it's male or female. It sounds more male than female. That chant I wanted, I don't know if any of you have ever seen my piece that the MFA owns, but that's the one that I did, The Crying Room, and there's a chant there that's the same beginning. They're always meant to sort of center you and calm you down, as the blue color will do as well. But I'm calling my ancestors' names into this room, and that's all about bringing them in to fortify me. So that's what you hear, and that's why you felt what you felt. They are in this room. When you start hearing those names, they are in this room. So.
We do have a question from Facebook. How long did it take you to complete the show?
Well, when did you invite me to do this show? March? January.
February.
January.
Somewhere January, February, or March.
Okay, well, I started working on it then. So I would say the final nail, it's done, wasn't until this red got dissolved. Because, I thought it was done, and then it was like, no, it's not done. So here we go. And usually for me, I'm not an artist who does a whole lot of work quickly, because I do so much research on the work. Oftentimes it's the research that takes the most amount of time. I might take, almost a year to do the research for a project. But then the actual execution of it is not necessarily that long, because I'm usually figuring out exactly what I want to say, and then what are the materials that I want to say it with. And then I start searching for things that I will use in that.
This has been a very revealing thing for me, because, we've known each other for 36 years, and in that 36-year journey, we've been a part of each other's work.
Sure.
And
Arsena has built a number of my installation rooms.
Regardless, I mean, we've shared a lot about what you've done and what I've done, and I began to realize that we are basically doing the same thing in many ways. We're telling the story of cultures that have suffered for no reason at all. The Armenians have suffered for centuries, blacks have suffered for centuries, and for all the most ridiculous reasons in the world, just because we're different, just because we have our own ideas, and we have what we need to express. And I think for me and the 36 years, this particular show is a culmination of all of that. I think you really reached a point of making a very, very poignant statement that cannot be overlooked. And that my dream one day would be I'd love to do an installation at the same time you do one.
Oh, call it.
Call it into space. It's going to happen.
Because I think it's just so much.
Yeah.
I mean, the blue, I did that whole
Yeah.
blue elimination show. It's like
It's definitely, you
culture,
definitely
our
have it.
cultures were definitely cultures that lived with visual expression.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's not like this around here, and it's not like this in this part of the world.
Right.
So we had to come from it to be able to do it.
Yeah, I agree. Totally. So now we got to make that happen.
Yeah.
Get ready to go turn the audio on?
Yes. I want the people
Yeah.
who are not here to hear
That's
this particular audio. And in the front room, that audio is Elizabeth starts it off by making a statement about her fear for America going towards fascism, and then I'm singing My Country 'Tis of Thee. And I picked that song because of its significance. Marian Anderson singing it on the Lincoln Memorial steps in 1939. Martin Luther King pulling pieces of it out for his speeches. That's why I picked that particular song.
Joseph Houston, Winifred Edwards, George, I Nora, Oranie, I Lion, Oranie, Odabo, Philip Miller, Joseph Houston, Winifred Edwards, George Meek, Ellen Morris, Annie Johnson, Nathaniel Snowden, Victoria Simpson Houston,
That's who I'm naming.
George Houston, Charles Houston, Henrietta Houston, Henry Houston, William H. Houston, James Lee, Eddie Lee, Albert Otto Lee,
That would be him.
Charles A. Snowden, Emma E. Snowden, William H. Snowden, Josephine Snowden Lee, Ophelia Thompson, Winnie C. Snowden, Leona Snowden, Clara May Gibson, Sylvia Osteen, William Robert Snowden Lee.